Liz.
Hey, Matt.
Liz, I have a question.
Yeah?
How many rhinestones typically goes on a synchronized swimming swimsuit?
How would you think I would know that?
I feel like you're in the deep end of the pool on synchronized swimming.
I am. My daughter is a synchronized swimmer. It is now actually called artistic swimming. And one of the big kind of news things that happened recently is that the rules for synchronized swimming changed, similar to the way that there is no more perfect 10 in gymnastics or in figure skating anymore. What some of the swimmers are saying is that it's taking some of the artistry and the creativity out of the routine, because now you are looking so precisely at every single move they're making and not looking at it as holistically. One of the things that the coaches now have to do is write their coach card, and that has to outline every move that the swimmers are going to make. And if they do it wrong, it can really impact the swimmers. So I'm wondering if at some point they will write their coach card, and if AI can produce the routine to make sure it's exactly what they were looking for. And if at some point they can use AI to choreograph a routine that will maximize difficulty given their swimmers' abilities.
And you think this is a good idea or not?
I don't love it because it takes away so much of the humanness. But I also know that the new synchro rules are very much, almost a game you have to play. And I guess it could also go to judging too. Right now, it's judged by humans. And so you're looking for things. And if it goes to being judged by AI, where everybody's legs at the same height, was it really, really synchronized? I think it's going to drive swimmers crazy. And I don't think that's where we want to go.
Right. In the last episode, we talked about AI vision, where you could take a picture of something and get intelligence around that. But how far are we from taking a video of a synchronized swim routine and have it score? How many judges sit on the scoring panel?
I think it's between 14 and 17.
God. The unemployment that's going to happen in the synchronized swimming judges world, this is disruptive.
It could be very disruptive. I'm not sure that they're concerned for their jobs. Most of them are volunteering. But
okay. Like you with the rhinestones. And we've talked about the idea of a teacher can use an AI tool to give an assessment on a piece of student writing. And sometimes there's value in that. It can illuminate, aspects of a student's writing they might not have been looking for, or it's unbiased in the approach. But that really should be coupled with human intelligence, right, and human assessment. Then the whole assessment game is elevated. So maybe in synchronized swimming, it's artistic swimming.
That's right.
Perhaps it's really the combination of those two things together. But interestingly, I think you avoided the question about how many rhinestones. Are you is this a triggering thing for you?
A little bit triggering, but an average suit has well over probably 100 to 200 rhinestones, and the rhinestones are easy to clean up. What's not easy to clean up is the amount of glitter. But one final thing for artistic swimming, the United States made the Olympics this year for the first time since 2008. Woo-hoo! They will have a team swimming in Paris, and it is hugely exciting in the artistic swimming world.
All right. Well, I saw the new AI robot that OpenAI is invested in. I think it's called Figure One. That thing's going to put you out of business making rhinestones in no time, so don't stress.
Can't wait.
I'm Matt Mervis.
And I'm Liz Rade.
And this is ChatEDU, a podcast about AI in K-12 education. In today's episode, Riding the AI Wave, we'll explore how both teachers and school leaders need to take on a new mindset for thinking about AI in the future of education.
But first, in the news, Matt will introduce us to Devin, a new coding agent from Cognition AI.
Liz will discuss a true confession from several Pulitzer Prize nominees.
Then, while Matt wishes he had been at South by Southwest, he'll share a fascinating AI story from the festival.
And finally, Liz will talk about why some teachers are just not that into generative AI. Then we'll go beneath the surface as we examine adaptive leadership and what it looks like to navigate from the classroom, from the principal's office, and from the district office regarding a change where we don't fully understand the destination.
And as usual, we'll end with a new listener question and our pal HeyPI with ChatBack. So, Matt, last time we were practically gushing over our digital buddy, HeyPI, But now there's a new AI on the block, Devin.
So Devin, this is fascinating. We've talked a little bit about AI agents over the last several episodes, and Devin is the most compelling AI agent we've seen yet. Devin is from Cognition AI, and it's a software development agent. And if you're familiar at all with software development, it's worth taking a look at some of the demo videos. But you can imagine it, right? A software developer they have a whole bunch of different tools open. They have a web browser. They have the README file that explains the project. They've got a development environment. They've got a debugging environment. So it's kind of like multiple tools that you bring to the party. And what's fascinating is that Devin does all of them, right? You hand it a software development task, and then it kind of goes to town on its own. And you really just need to kind of check back. It will come back and ask for feedback, and then you keep going. So Ethan Mollick, now's when we have our sip of coffee, right? We've decided if we say custom GPT or Ethan Mollick's name, we take a drink. So Ethan Mollick did a really cool write-up about Devin, and he said, and I quote, "You can start to see what an AI agent can do. I give it instructions, and it actually makes a plan, and it executes that plan autonomously, doing research, writing code, debugging, with no need for me to do anything else than provide feedback. This is the first example of a truly different mode of working with AI to accomplish work tasks, a really cool start." So that's Mollick on Devin. That's me on Devin. What do you think of this Devin thing?
I think it sounds like a lot of job replacement. I mean, don't you think will it make software developers obsolete? If I can just ask it to create me a software?
Yeah, it's interesting. The two demos I watched were software developers, and they were like giddy. Because I think if you're a more senior software developer, this is kind of what a junior software developer. I mean, yes, you're right. I think agents absolutely point to great questions about job replacement, but it may do work that is kind of lower level work that makes a software developer more productive, which has been the thinking so far about even just this co-creation phase where you're using a tool like GitHub or even ChatGPT to like help me debug some code or help me write some code. So it may be a question of just elevating the productive output, but sure, it is doing a big swath of work. And I think about that even like on our team last year, we built this really cool new social media literacy curriculum called the Social Balance. And it took 4 of us, including Liz, myself, our colleague Cam, our colleague Gary, some outside folks. I mean, there were activities, there were assessments, there were videos, there was custom software work that happened. And it took 4 people plus outside contractors basically a year, right? Could an AI agent have done that entire task in the course of a day or several days, just kind of coming back to us with iterative feedback?
Well, then what are the 4 of us going to do all day?
Sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais.
I don't know. Sounds like it's eliminating my job.
Well, I mean, let's look at it from the principal's office, right? Maybe it's not just about eliminating the job, but where you place your energy. So think of all the time a principal or an AP puts into schedule development and building the schedule for the coming school year. I mean, if an AI agent could do that work, what's the one thing we hear from principals all the time? I don't have the time to get out of my office and get into the classroom, right? So what if an AI agent is able to do these big chunks of administrative tasks, allowing the superintendent, the principal, the teacher? I think we've talked about this a lot. I don't think teachers' jobs are going to change in numbers. They're going to change in focus and skill and facility. But it really might have this interesting shift for folks in leadership positions. It's not just Devin. Microsoft just released a new framework about these AI agents. There's rumors that ChatGPT 5 has a major focus on AI agents. I mentioned Mustafa Suleiman's book, The Coming Wave. Now, Mustafa Suleiman now of Microsoft, not of Inflection, because he's left the HeyPI team, which we talked about in breaking news in the last episode. In his book, he talks about 4 stages of AI. Indexing, which is kind of where indexing and labeling and self-learning, that's kind of how the models got built in the first place. Co-creation is step 2, which is what we're in right now. Write me a lesson plan, write me a rubric. Then the third phase are these agents. And so if ChatGPT 5 is agents, boy, this is coming fast. And then the last phase is AGI, and artificial general intelligence, where we're not prompting it, it's prompting us to get stuff done. I don't even want to think about that. This really may be something that we'll have to start thinking about quickly. So far, it doesn't seem like AI agents are acting as authors or journalists, but it sounds like some journalists have been reflecting on their use of AI in their work. Interesting. Is this a confession or another kind of disclosure? Catch us up on what's going on here, Liz.
I just read an article about the Pulitzer Prize finalists, which haven't been announced yet, but Pulitzer Prize is broken down into different categories. And in the journalism category, for the first time this year, the application did ask the journalists if they used generative AI in some way to write their articles. And 5 of the 45 respondents said that they did. And, there's a lot of debate about what that means and is it okay? And the Pulitzer Prize Committee has always said that this is not to eliminate them from the competition. In fact, we just want to know how the technology is being used, and we don't want to be thought of as not open to using technology. And there's so many good ways that journalists could be using AI to do their research and deepen their investigations that are ethical, I think, and that they're not asking AI to write their articles. They're not out there applying for a Pulitzer Prize written by ChatGPT, but they are disclosing that they've used it in different ways.
I love this story because it's a perfect parallel to the conversations we're having in schools, both with students using AI, but also teachers using and principals using AI and superintendents using AI, right? So where do we find that ethical line? Where do we self-disclose? How do we cite? So it's nice to see the Pulitzer dealing with it. My only question is, do you think that really only 5 of the 45, were those the 5 that were really honest? What about the other 35? I don't know.
I don't think everybody's on board with it yet. I mean, I think there are some people that really are ethically opposed to it and are not using it. And I think some people may not have defined their use of AI as being part of their writing process. So perhaps if they generated their idea for their article from ChatGPT, but beyond that, everything was human, I don't know. Does that count as using it for your writing? Not really. It got you to the idea.
I'm going to go with yes, but that's a fair point.
So, Matt, you didn't get to go to Austin, but you were hanging on every tweet, or whatever we call them, and blog post, and you discovered this wild intersection between AI, holographics, and Marilyn Monroe.
Well, honestly, who needs Austin when you have the entire world at your digital fingertips, or in this case, popping up in the middle of your living room? Yeah, I love this story. We're going to pair it with actually 2 stories. So there's a project called Marilyn Monroe. I think it's Marilyn Monroe 3.0. So it's down in Austin. It is a combination of holographics and AI. So they took everything about Marilyn Monroe's life and trained a model. So that includes all of her narrative and film and backstory and books written about her, but also everything happening in the time during her life, and trained a custom model so that this now holographic AI Marilyn Monroe can pop up in the middle of this office in our podcast studio and talk about anything conversationally, the way we do with ChatGPT or HeyPI, but about her life, both historical and also in contemporary times. So there's a really interesting company called Engage XR, which has been doing this in a school-facing environment. They have a thing called School of AI, where just like the Marilyn Monroe example, they've custom trained some models around JFK, Nikola Tesla, Rosa Parks, Neil Armstrong. Same idea, everything about their lives, their history, and a student can put on a VR headset and then sit across from them and have a whole conversation. I can sit with Rosa Parks and talk about all of her life's experience, and it's adaptive, and we can just have this back and forth. And if I want to flash forward and say, tell me what you think about the Black Lives Matter movement, she can take the context of all her history and bring it forward into contemporary times. I think this is fascinating.
That's so cool. I would love to sit down and have that conversation.
Me too, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in our deep dive section. Liz, so maybe Marilyn Monroe as instructional design would change opinions, but in the here and now, I understand that some teachers are just not digging this AI stuff. In fairness, it's only been like a year and a half, but catch us up. What's going on here?
Yeah, so there was just an article in EdWeek. The title is Most Teachers Are Not Using AI, and Here's Why. And I think this is pretty consistent with what we've seen as we go out and talk to teachers. And I'm still surprised sometimes that teachers haven't used it yet and haven't really seen it. And for many, the reason is they just have other more pressing priorities and they haven't had the time to really sit down and play with it.
Imagine that.
Yeah, they got a few other things to do. That's the biggest barrier right now is just having the time and the reason to sit down and do it. If some of them took the time, they might find other time by using it. But until they have the time to sit down and try it out, they don't really even know what it can do. And the second biggest reason is because they don't know how to use these tools. So they've heard of it, but if they haven't tried using it yet, or if they go to it and don't exactly understand prompt engineering or what this tool can do for them, they may not have a reason to go to it because they don't see how it's going to help.
Luckily, there's a podcast called ChatEDU where they can hear about all sorts of use cases.
That's true. Some of the other reasons are, I'm not really sure how this is going to help me. The data privacy thing continues to be a problem. Many teachers don't think it's applicable to their subject. Or, if you're a kindergarten teacher, you may not realize that there are still things that ChatGPT can do for you or any of these large language models because many teachers believe, and we agree, that ChatGPT doesn't have much of a place in a kindergarten classroom. We are not saying that kids should be using it at that young age, but there are things that it could do for the teacher. So, I think there's a lot of different reasons, but not every teacher is that into it. And, that's okay. We're slowly moving teachers towards it, and we're going to see more and more teachers getting on it. One of the other interesting things I read is that maybe they did try it a year and a half ago and just got some bad answers, saw that it hallucinates, and kind of wrote it off now, right? That they developed these opinions that, well, this is not true, it's wrong, it's disruptive in a wrong way, and why would I even go back to it?
Yeah, we've seen the hallucination thing be both for students and teachers. I remember we had some really fun conversations with some seniors at a local high school, and just from their own time perspective, they're like, if I can go get the correct information from Google and then not do the critical analysis, like why should I go use ChatGPT and then spend twice that amount of time having to fact check it? We've said very often here that hallucinations are an Achilles heel. We've talked about strategies that will improve that, but it's going to have to get better.
Yeah, definitely for teachers to really be fully on board, especially with anything that's student facing or anything that is factual.
Well, hopefully this summer, there'll be a little bit more time. I know a lot of schools are certainly planning their fall PD and back to school PD to have pieces of this, so hopefully we'll take it a step by step. But I'm completely sympathetic. I'm never argumentative or oppositional when I'm speaking with teachers that are either ethically opposed or just, not seeing the connections. Our job as advocates and as supporters and facilitators is to help find those connections and find meaningful hooks.
Yeah, we've talked to plenty of teachers that really don't see the value in it and, in their subject matter and their teaching, they are happy doing what they're doing. And, if they want to keep writing the weekly email, by hand, Adam Rade, let him do it.
Adam Rade, for those uninitiated, is Liz's husband.
Who has never been on ChatGPT.
Oh, ouch, this is getting personal. Let's move to Beneath the Surface.
All right, Matt, let's get beneath the surface with our AI and education deep dive and how all educators, regardless of their role, can become adaptive leaders in the age of AI. I know you recently were at our state superintendent's conference and you did a session on adaptive leadership and how it relates to AI. Can you start by telling us what adaptive leadership is and why it matters in our AI world?
Yeah, you bet. There have been several great books written about adaptive leadership. Leading on the Line is one that comes to mind, but I did just recently hear a great podcast. The podcast is called Work Lab, by the way. It's Molly Wood, who's a longtime tech reporter, and it's kind of hosted by Microsoft, and she did an interview with Dr. Britt Taylor, who talked about adaptive leadership in the age of AI. All right, so what is it? You kind of have two types of leadership. You have technical leadership and adaptive leadership. So technical leadership is where you know what the outcome is. I mean, imagine even something hard. You're building a rocket ship, or even Elon Musk, and you're building a rocket ship and you need it to, kind of hold on to the rocket and land it on the ocean. There's a lot of unknowns there, but the overall physics and the constraints and the opportunities are within the realm of understanding and possibility. So that's a technical leadership challenge, even though it's tricky.
And the final outcome is understood, right?
Yeah, well, it blows up a bunch of times, but generally.
But you know what you're aiming for.
Yes,
you're aiming
exactly.
to get a rocket on the moon, or right. You're aiming to build a new school.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Adaptive leadership is where you know the inputs, you know sort of like the buoys in the navigational lane, but you're not quite sure what the outcome is. Climate change is an interesting adaptive leadership challenge because we don't totally know what the outcome will be. And so at our superintendent's conference, I focused on three areas where we know what the inputs are. We know what some of the areas of change are. We talk about them quite a bit here on the podcast, but we don't totally know what the end result will be, and it will be changing. So those buckets were, first, what are the skills that students will need to know and be able to do as the world and the labor market and post-secondary requirements change rapidly in the face of AI. The second is how AI might reshape instructional design. And then the third is that how productivity inside schools, but also productivity increases with AI outside of schools, might force especially district and school leaders to rethink things like people and budgets and schedules. So we kind of went through those scenarios one by one and talked about the adaptive leadership challenges. In my mind, this is not just a principal and superintendent thing. I think every stakeholder in the school, all of us, it's almost like it's a little comforting to say, I'm going to take on an adaptive leadership mindset. I'm going to work on this stuff. I find it fascinating. It's going to impact my life. And I'm going to accept that I don't totally know where it's going and develop some skills to help navigate that.
That's really cool. So let's start with the skills that students need. So in episode 4, we talked about that opinion piece by Maria Flynn from Jobs for the Future about when your technical skills are eclipsed, your humanity will matter more than ever. And so she argued that some of these very human skills like critical thinking, creativity, communication are going to be critical. And, the story you shared today about Devin seems to really bring this home.
Yeah, 1,000%, right? Devin's taken on all these technical skills. And so what's critical for the coder? To manage ambiguity, to work with technology effectively, to navigate change, to problem solve, sort of all the things that the AI is not doing. And what I find fascinating over and over again, there's multiple lists of what are the skills that kids will need to know and be able to do in a world of AI. They consistently line up to, at least in our corner of the world, it's portrait of the graduate. But you could just say, what are the 10 skills that every kid needs to know and be able to do when they graduate high school? Map it back to kindergarten or pre-K, and it's the same skills: communication, problem solving, creativity, managing ambiguity, these transferable human skills. So what's striking is that the secret sits inside the center of their at least aspirational curriculum targets to manage this change. So that's a good thing. We just need to unlock it.
Then the second bucket is focused on instructional design. So in episode 5, we talked about Genie from Google's DeepMind and if AI instructional design will take the shape of, say, the holodeck from Star Trek sooner rather than later. And Genie is a generative AI model in which anyone, including teachers, can write a prompt and Genie will create an interactive video game on a topic. So now this week, we are literally getting one step closer to that holodeck vision with holographic Marilyn Monroe that you just talked about and School of AI from Engage XR. And it's incredible how fast this is moving. Right now, I see teachers still blown away by ChatGPT or Magic School when it helps to differentiate a text or develop a lesson plan. Can you imagine when we go and do PD about Marilyn Monroe popping up in the middle of their classroom?
Well, yeah, we're definitely in jaws on the floor territory here. And I think it's critical to underscore that in all these scenarios, in these evolving models of instructional design, whether it's School of AI or Marilyn Monroe or Genie, none of this is to suggest that the role of the teacher is not central, right? But there is this maybe it's like a human augmented classroom where you've got teachers doing hands-on projects, maybe with no technology in sight. The cell phones are all in pouches or whatever the case may be, but human-to-human problem-solving, communication, collaboration is going on in the classroom. But then to build some of the declarative knowledge and skills, there are AI tools that can do a great job really kind of beefing up what kids know and are able to do. But the connection between, so the AI is going to get better and better, right? At the what is it, how do I do it, like, knowledge and skills. But the connection between what do I know and where am I going as a human being, only a skilled, caring, humanly intelligent teacher will be able to make those connections. So I don't think we're going to see teachers, missing from this equation at all. They become more important, but their roles shift in these new kinds of instructional design environments.
Can't agree more that teachers are not going anywhere, and they are going to have to continue to guide the experiences that students are going to have, even with all the AI in the world. They're not going away, which is comforting for us. So let's finally unpack the third bucket, which is how organizations will need to adapt to changes brought on by increased productivity. So I don't think any principal would argue with the AI agent doing the schedule so they could get into classrooms, as we discussed earlier. But there's also changes outside of school that will force schools to adapt.
Sure. Yeah. If you accept the assumption that AI is going to make people more productive, it's going to ultimately lead to shifts. Bernie Sanders just this couple weeks ago announced a proposed bill in Congress to make a 4-day work week without reduction in pay, right? Based on the productivity of, yeah, right, exactly. Based on the productivity of AI. Well, we love it, but boy, how will schools adapt to that? Because not every business will be able to do that. It is true. AI probably can deliver a 4-day work week based on increased productivity without losing staff, at least in its current state, and keeping people at the same pay rate in most situations, or at least lots of knowledge work. But how do schools adapt to that? I mean, we have certainly 4-day school week experiments going on in Colorado and other parts of the country. And as we said before, if AI agents are doing big pieces of work, will it change? We're arguing that the teaching staff is not going to change substantially in numbers. But if productivity goes up dramatically, will it change finance, HR, transportation, school leadership, curriculum, assessment, data? I mean, these are all unknown. So yet again, like a third bucket where in an adaptive leadership manner, you kind of can see the shape of the changes. You just don't know where it's going to land.
Well, I like Bernie's idea of a 4-day work week. But again, I see a lot of inequity in that, right? Because there are going to be certain jobs that can't go to a 4-day work week, right? Like we need a grocery store to still have workers in it all the time, or hairstylists or bus drivers, right? Like those things, those jobs can't go to only 4-day work week. So it'll just, it can increase that equity gap again, and who gets to now live this 4-day work week life versus still having a 5 or 6 or even 7-day work week.
Or how do schools adapt to it?
Absolutely. So thinking through these challenges and investing in an adaptive leadership mindset is going to require a lot of thinking from every corner of our schools, including teachers, administrators, and we really need to include the students in this thinking and their parents. It's going to have effects on everybody, and we've got to keep listening to those student and parent voices.
I agree. And because there's, a sense of the inputs, but no, clear idea of the destination, we need a navigational map, right? We need steps that we can take right now. And it's funny because most schools I'm working with right now are working, they say, we need an AI policy, right? You'll excuse me because I've shared this before in the podcast, but I'll often push back and say, you need an awesome AI planning team that's going to think through some of these adaptive leadership challenges as teachers, as students, as parents, as Liz just said, right? But one of the things they'll build is a policy. That policy is absolutely going to need to be fluid and changing, but these can be your thought partners, your pros inside each district that can begin working on these types of challenges and shifts.
All right, Matt. So you've identified a list of 5 things that these AI planning teams can focus on as they're creating policy and thinking about AI. So let's go through these quickly. So the first one you talk about is cultivating a shared vision and commitment to innovation. So just making sure that teachers and leaders are open to and excited about innovation and learning and being adaptable in the face of AI driven changes.
Yeah. And the second, these aren't rocket science, but I think helpful to think through them. So the second is certainly investing in professional development and capacity building. Go back to that Ed Week story, right? One of the pieces is that teachers felt like they didn't have some of those skills and facility and PD opportunities. So leaders definitely providing resources and opportunities for teachers to develop their skills, thinking about integrating AI and implementing innovative teaching methods.
Foster collaboration and knowledge sharing. So this should be part of the school culture already, and I hope it is, that teachers are sharing some of their best practices, lessons learned, trends, tools that they're using, but we really want to maybe even more than we already are, intentionally create these opportunities for teachers to teach teachers, or teachers to teach administrators, or administrators to teach teachers. And sometimes they learn a lot from their students.
On the AI planning teams, where I'm lucky enough to be in the district working with them, this happens every session. Sometimes formally, like we create a space for folks to catch each other up, sometimes informally, but these are your leaders. These are your champions. These are the folks at the front of the ship that are trying to kind of find the next navigational buoy. So giving them a space to share, collaborate, and then bring that back to their schools and to their departments becomes really critical. The next is something, again, we've talked about here on ChatEDU, but it's making sure that this is equitable. We know that AI, that generative AI, is going to be a fundamental literacy for all students as they go off into their post-secondary kind of careers and pathways. We also know that right now, much of that is happening outside of school. So prioritizing school-based, student-facing AI, where kids are learning to use these tools in a safe, productive, and ethical manner, has to be a key target.
And monitor and evaluate impacts. So you've got to look at what you're doing and what is happening. So, collecting and analyzing data on the effectiveness of any AI-powered initiatives, and using these insights to inform ongoing improvement and adaptation is really important. This doesn't have to be a formal survey given to the whole school. It doesn't have to be formal research, but just looking at the results, looking at what's happening is definitely important, and reflecting on and coming back to, what your intention is an important step in any of this leadership.
And it's happening lots of different places, right? Many schools are doing and districts are doing many of these things, but we wanted to sort of share them as a holistic set. And so, hopefully this is a useful frame. At some level, just settling into the idea that we don't know the destination. I mean, when I heard the Mollywood podcast, I was like, I feel better. I understand what some of the inputs are, but I'm going to wrap my brain around the fact that I don't know where things are going, but I'm going to get curious and start thinking and asking good questions, or hopefully good questions. So some of it's just adopting a mindset about adaptive leadership, and to keep exploring the shape of what will come, whether it's instructional design, the skills that kids need, or how we deal with organizations, or other buckets of tasks and skills and changes that we have to think about as we move along the way.
That's how we're all going to become adaptive leaders, no matter what our role is. There's roles for leaders at all levels. All right, now it is time for ChatBack, where we answer a listener's question.
Hi, my name's Steve Turgeon from Simsbury High School, social studies teacher. My question was, one of the things that got me into social studies as a content area had to do with the idea of using the knowledge that we gain from learning about the past to appreciate the present. With so much of that knowledge weight being displaced upon AI to some extent, how can we make sure that we're still valuing a base of educational knowledge alongside all of the benefits that AI purports to give us?
Liz, these teacher questions from the AI conference are fantastic.
I love them.
Yeah, good one, Steve. And well-timed for the episode today. And as a history teacher, dude, I relate. So I think that School of AI from EngageXR story is an interesting perspective on Steve's question. I mean, think about the power of being in something like a VR headset and being able to speak with Tesla, with Marie Curie, with Benjamin Franklin, with Rosa Parks, with Neil Armstrong, with Winston Churchill, with JFK, with Einstein.
Find some people of color in that list, please.
Well, I had Rosa Parks, but you're right. It's not representative enough. Cleopatra, Vincent van Gogh, and Julius Caesar are not going to improve that situation. And I think there will be. I mean, one of my favorite VR experiences was one called Traveling While Black. obviously, folks are going to create more compelling and diverse experiences. But here you've got all these characters or all these historical figures where an AI model is trained on every aspect of their life. So a student can sit and have a real-time conversation with them and learn from them in their words based on whatever curiosity a student has. I mean, so there's a lot of power there for AI, and in this case AI and VR, to not let AI displace the importance of learning from historical figures, but to bring those two worlds together in a really powerful way.
Yeah, I think it's a really engaging and personalized experience, which we've been talking about AI's power in personalizing education. So imagine a classroom where everyone's talking to someone different because they want to talk to different historical figures, and then, have a debate or have a discussion about what they've learned, depending on who they've spoken to. So I think there's a lot of ways to use AI to be the content expert.
Yeah, this is a year from now, Rick, we'll really start to understand what this looks like. This is so brand new that it's just like a fantasy land. I mean, it's a real product, it's a real thing, but a year from now or 2 years from now, where we've got thousands and tens of thousands of kids having these types of real-time conversations in VR or maybe holographic like Marilyn Monroe, it's going to be fascinating. So let's see what our buddy HeyPI has to say on Steve's excellent question.
That's a great question. Balancing the excitement for new technologies with the value of history is indeed crucial. Here are a few suggestions. 1. Connect the past and the future. Demonstrate how historical events can provide context and lessons for current and future technological advancements. 2. Promote interdisciplinary learning. Encourage students to explore the intersection of history and technology and how they can inform each other. 3. Use technology to enhance history education. Leverage technology to make history more engaging and interactive, such as through virtual or augmented reality experiences. 4. Encourage reflection and critical thinking. Challenge students to think critically about the implications of new technologies and how they might shape the future, informed by lessons from the past. 5. Champion the importance of the humanities. Emphasize the value of history and other humanities subjects in providing perspective and a deeper understanding of the human experience, even as technology evolves. By highlighting the connections between history and technology, we can ensure that both are valued and integrated into education, fostering well-rounded students who can navigate the past, present, and future with insight and wisdom.
It is fascinating how not everything that we kind of think through, the Liz and Matt hive mind, but often a lot of alignment to HeyPI.
I think we are aligned pretty well with HeyPI. I think we've done a lot of reading and we've done a lot of our work, so it makes sense. This has been a great chat, Matt. We talked about our new AI best buddy, Devin. We explored how Pulitzer Prize nominees are reflecting on their use of AI. We did a virtual visit to South by Southwest to hang out with Marilyn Monroe, as well as engage XR School of AI characters. And then we looked at teacher attitudes towards AI in a recent survey. We went beneath the surface and explored how we can all become adaptive leaders to help us navigate the changing world of AI regardless of our role at school. And of course, we hung out with Steve and HeyPI in ChatBack. Please follow, rate, and review our podcast and follow us on Instagram at ChatEDUpod.
And if you have a question for our ChatBack section, please email us at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's chatedu@edadvance.org.
ChatEDU is recorded at EdAdvance, the Regional Education Service Center in Litchfield, Connecticut. ChatEDU is produced and edited by Ahmed Malik, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussion to life. Additional support provided by Jonathan Costa and Abby Waldron. We are grateful for their invaluable contributions to the success of this podcast. And a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey of exploring the innovative integration of AI in education.
See you next time.
Bye.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at EdAdvance. I want to thank you for listening to ChatEDU, our podcast that examines critical issues regarding the application of artificial intelligence in the pre-K-12 learning space. New episodes will drop every 2 weeks throughout the rest of this school year. We appreciate your interest in ChatEDU.